through the hour. All right, first to our top story. Fire in the streets of Athens as peaceful protests outside the Greek parliament turned violent. Demonstrators there and police exchanging volleys of tear gas, pepper spray, and Molotov cocktails. This as Greek officials approve a drastic bailout plan outlined by the country's creditors. Joining me now is former German economics minister Karl-Theodor Guttenberg. Did I do that right?
You did. It's a long name, isn't it?
It is, but it's a good name. It's good to have you here. What do you make of the latest developments coming out of there? Obviously, we've been seeing the video and the pictures of the violence in the streets all night and morning.
A long way to go for all parties somehow involved in the whole thing. So for the Greek people, for the Greek government, regardless how long it will stay in power, for the Eurozone, for the leading members of the Eurozone as such. So we are in the midst of a very muddy, messy process. We have reached the first little step, but it is a little step, and there's a lot of things to come.
And what happens to Alexis Tsipras?
I think he will stay in power, although he has turned around, I would say 170 degrees, not 180 degrees, because if you turn like once or twice 170 degrees, you don't land on the same spot again. So he's tactically quite skilled, and the people still like him. So what we saw yesterday was not as bad as it looked like. It was not masses of people from Athens coming and protesting. It was a tinier margin than many actually commented it. And it's not, I think, a reflection of the whole Greece. The people still somehow like him, so I think he'll stay in power. Do I like the option of having him in power? No, I don't. But I think we have to live with it for a while.
What do the people want? How much are they willing to commit to? How much are they willing to change? Because you look down the road and you think, this culture is not changing. Are they?
No, I don't think they will change dramatically. You cannot just shift to one side within a nanosecond. It doesn't work that way. We have tried it now for a couple of years. We have heard many, many promises. We have seen many broken promises. We have seen rules being bended and stretched again and again, but we have not seen something coming out of it where we would say they are now in a healthy state. They are willing to reform. They are not only looking at austerity measures as such. It's a mixture of reform. And will we see the money at the end of the day? Probably not. Not again.
Yeah, and it just makes you wonder what the implications are for the story that happens there for the rest of the world. I mean, as a business network, we're trying to decide what this means for investors globally. What sort of exposure is there to Greece? What sort of exposure do we all have to another country that could be facing similar problems? Puerto Rico is obviously one of them. Jim Rogers saying the U.S. is going to face the same problems, not now, but way down the road. What is the broader implications of this story happening in Greece right now?
The broader implication is if we set up rules for, even if it's just an economic club, and if we constantly break the rules just to somehow have some geopolitical developments here and there, it will become more and more difficult, really, really difficult to set rules for anyone in an economic wider sphere. And this is why I'm quite concerned. So you may say it's the fate of socialism to at one day to run out of money you don't have and borrow it from others.
But KT, aren't you worried about the fact that this is just a fixed exchange rate system? They've got no fiscal unity underneath the currency system, and therefore what we know from history is that fixed exchange rate systems do not last. And this is the beginning part of the fraying of that fixed exchange rate system.
Right, Anthony, and I would add one more point. The thing we have missed in the Eurozone was that we came up with a monetary union without a political union first. So even if you would like to slide into a fiscal union, flexible or inflexible, it needs to be a political union first. What we see right now is more discrepancies than we've ever had before.
But is a political union impossible, given the makeup of Europe?
It is extremely hard. We are dealing with the European Union with 28 different cultures, probably even more within the member states, if you count that as well. In the Eurozone, with 19, it's a lot. It's extremely difficult, and we have some kind of birth mistake of the Eurozone. So what we are doing right now is kicking the can down the road. I keep saying kicking the can up the road. It keeps rolling down to our feet, and we think we have a progress.
Like
we don't have it.
We had a birth mistake, also known as slavery, in the United States. But what we were able to do is that the strong benefited the weak to make the union successful. Are the German people willing to do that?
They were for a couple of years now. Although we see quite some Germany bashing at the very moment, we must not forget we already had 2 packages where Germany put a lot of money on the table and where more or less everyone knows that we won't see the money again. We won't see it again. Secondly, we helped Ireland, we helped Portugal, we helped Spain, we helped others. So they are willing, but patience is limited.
All right, patience is limited is a good way to wrap it up. All right, Karl-Theodor Guttenberg. Actually, can I get away with calling you KT as well?
KT,
That
please
works.
do.
All right, another.